You know how everyone is obsessed with speed, faster, faster, faster? Well, what if the best strategy today is actually to slow down? We're going to dive into a really fascinating business strategy called decision superiority. It's a totally counterintuitive plan for a world where AI has made everything quicker, but not necessarily smarter. So let's unpack what that really means.
This quote right here, it just gets right to the heart of the problem we're seeing everywhere in tech today. They ship faster than they can reason about risk. And that right there is the core tension we're going to be exploring.
So when you're moving at that breakneck speed, what happens? Well, it creates what this strategy calls the structural gap. Think of it like this. AI makes it super easy and fast to create stuff, removing all the friction. But, and this is a huge but, it does not remove the responsibility for the decisions we make. And that gap, that's a seriously dangerous place for any company to find itself.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract theory. This gap shows up in really painful, very real ways. You see products getting pushed out the door before they're actually safe. Compliance becomes an afterthought, something you scramble to fix after you've already been exposed. Security gets bolted on at the end instead of being designed in from the very beginning. And maybe worst of all, decisions are made so fast that no one can even explain why they were made, let alone defend them.
So how in the world do you fight this trend? Well, you have to make a choice, a really deliberate, almost contrarian choice. You make a bet against speed. You are actively choosing human judgment over raw velocity. And what's so interesting about this is that it's not just a business strategy, it's a whole philosophy.
And this all boils down to their core mission, which is just so powerful. We do not aim to be the fastest, we aim to be the last line before failure. Think about that. It's not about being the first to market. It's about making sure your company doesn't completely fall apart once you get there.
So this philosophy is built on a really clear set of principles. On one hand, they believe that AI increases your output, sure, but not your judgment. They believe speed without any rules is just a liability waiting to happen. And they firmly believe that you simply cannot automate accountability. So because of that, they reject all the typical stuff, like consulting that starts with a tool, or selling speed like it's the only thing that matters.
Okay, having a strong philosophy is awesome. But how do you turn that into a business that actually, makes money? That brings us to our next section here, selling decision superiority. We're going to see how this whole belief system gets translated into actual services that people will pay for.
And this is where it gets really crucial, because it's all about what they're actually selling. They're not selling you a tool, they're selling decision superiority. They're not offering shortcuts, they're offering clarity. And this one's my favorite. They're not selling you reassurance that everything's going to be fine. No, they're selling risk management, which starts by admitting things might not be fine unless you're prepared. That's a huge shift.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Here's the first of their three core services, CMMC Assessment and Strategy. Now, CMMC, that stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. It's a mouthful, I know, but basically, it's a standard that you have to meet if you want to be a contractor for the U.S. Department of Defense. So right away, you know this service is aimed at managing really serious risks in a super high-stakes environment.
So what are you actually getting here? Well, it's not a one-and-done audit. It's an assessment of your company's maturity, a real strategy that's weighted based on your biggest risks, and something they call remediation companionship. That just means they don't hand you a report and say, good luck. They stick with you to actually fix the problems. The whole point is to give you ongoing support for your decisions.
And just as important is what this is not. It is not a simple checkbox audit. It's not a document factory that just spits out a bunch of paperwork. And it's definitely not one of those compliance mills that just rubber stamps a certification. The real value is in the deep partnership.
Okay, on to service number 2, the fractional VCISO. The V stands for virtual, and CISO is Chief Information Security Officer. So think of it as getting access to a top-level security executive who can own risk for you, but on a more flexible, part-time basis. What's really key here is the focus on the human stuff that AI just can't touch. This person takes ownership of decisions at an executive level. They act as a translator between the boardroom and the tech teams, which is absolutely crucial. And, maybe most importantly, they provide accountability when things go wrong.
And again, they are very direct about what this isn't. It's not a VCISO as a team where accountability gets spread so thin that nobody's really in charge. It's not just about implementing a bunch of new tools and calling that leadership. And it avoids what the source bluntly calls security program theater, looking really busy without actually making the company any safer. And that brings us to the third and final core service, fractional cloud ops.
This one is all about making sure that the products you're building, often with a ton of help from AI, are actually safe to operate out in the chaotic real world.
You see, this service bridges that huge gap between a product that technically works in a demo and one that can actually survive out in the wild. It involves assessing if you're ready for production, putting real discipline and gates on your releases, and setting up systems to spot failures before they become disasters. It's about managing safe to operate as a concrete outcome.
And to be crystal clear, this is not an app development service. They are not there to build your product for you or to just fill a seat on your DevOps team. Their specific job is to take what you've already built and make it strong enough to survive.
So, you have these 3 different services. How do they all fit together? Well, they form something called the decision stack. You start at the bottom with CMMC, which handles all your contractual and regulatory risk. In the middle, you've got the vCISO, governing all the big-picture decisions around security and AI. And at the top, CloudOps makes sure the actual execution is safe. Together, they create this comprehensive shield of good judgment.
Okay, so this is a very specific, pretty high-end offering. How on earth do you market something like this? Well, this brings us to what they call the manifesto marketing model. And it's fascinating because it's a strategy that's literally designed to repel most people, not attract them. Which, of course, makes you ask the obvious question, right? So how do you find customers with this kind of focus? If you're actively trying to turn people away, where does your business even come from? And the answer is another one of these incredibly powerful, counterintuitive statements. We do not pursue volume. We pursue authority. The goal isn't to get the most leads. The goal is to be the single most trusted voice in their specific field. It's a trust game, not a numbers game. And this whole authority-first approach acts as a filter. So their website, it doesn't read like a glossy sales brochure, it reads like a manifesto of what they believe. The content they create isn't designed to sell you something, it's designed to challenge your assumptions. And they have a single way to engage with them, a strategic diagnostic, so that by the time you actually talk to a person, the conversation is already way beyond the basics. So if you're not chasing volume, what are you chasing? What does success even look like? And that brings us to the end here, measuring what truly matters. It means totally ignoring the typical vanity metrics that most companies are obsessed with. So this is the real scorecard. On the left, you've got the vanity metrics they flat out ignore. Leads, clicks, how fast they're going. And on the right, you have the success metrics they actually care about. Did we achieve clarity in our decisions? Did we reduce risk before something bad happened? And did we retain the trust of our executives? That is a completely different way to define. And we'll end on this final, really provocative thought that just reframes this entire conversation. AI is not the threat. Unowned decisions are. And that leaves us with a challenging question, doesn't it? In our frantic rush to accelerate absolutely everything, have we forgotten who is ultimately supposed to be responsible for what happens next?